Celebrating America. Railways stretched across the U.S., helping form the early stages of our country. East Texas is home of the formation of one of those early lines. East Texas News Weekend's Alex Weister has more on this historic railroad.
The sounds of a time when locomotion was the heart of America's transportation.
It's the commerce and transportation of Tyler back in those, from anywhere from 1871 on.
One of the early railroads, the Cotton Belt route, dates back to the 1870s, where it started as a 21-mile stretch of railroad from Tyler to Big Sandy.
Its basic routes were the Tap Railroad that were located here in Tyler. It transported cotton from Tyler to Big Sandy, where the Texas and Pacific Railroad had a station there for further transportation of the cotton.
In the following decades, the small route expanded into a multi-state system that connected East Texas all the way up to St. Louis, with stops in Memphis and Shreveport among many others, reaching over 1,500 miles of track by the 1940s.
It developed the Southwest and the South, through the cotton, bringing cotton to the northern states.
From transporting cotton locally, the railway transformed into a service that moved commercial product and passengers across the South, pioneering a service called the Blue Streak, which was an overnight service similar to those many use today.
Somebody having to wait at a dealership for a week to get parts in, they could get it in 2 days. It was a pioneering thing. The Cotton Belt Railroad overall was very innovative in various technical abilities of engines and expediting freight service.
Also used as a troop transport line during wartime.
Troop transports during World War I, World War II, and the Korean War, along with military supplies.
While the Cotton Belt no longer remains, following a consolidation into Southern Pacific Railroad in 1992, its tracks are still used in modern transport, and its history is kept alive at the Cotton Belt Museum in Tyler, where it began over 150 years ago.
Just the love of that little railroad that could. It really is a railroad that could and did.
Alex Weister, East Texas News Weekend.